The panel discussion is on AI, and robotics for Europe's manufacturing resilience and competitiveness. And just as a means of introduction, both Czech Republic but also Saarbrücken, which finds itself on the border with France and has since the Franco-Prussian Wars gone through very intense conflict, both in the World Wars, during the tensions with France, and industry often had to rebuild itself completely from the ground up. So it had to show resilience in that respect, but it also showed us that industry is crucial to civilizational resilience even in the 21st century. And the fact that a lot of our tech stack and a lot of the technologies that average people use rests on the shoulders of America is something that I think as Europe, in terms of digital sovereignty, we should definitely concern ourselves with. Equally, we have much sterner regulations than the rest of the world, which is for good and bad. Again, a theme we will be discussing, how we can kind of marry this resilience and this innovation along with the regulations and with the competitiveness, how these kind of themes come together. And joining me on this very interesting interdisciplinary panel is this wonderful roster of gentlemen. You may have seen them before. Starting from my immediate left, Professor Vladimír Mařík, the Scientific Director of CIIRC CTU, where you find yourselves. Then Dr. Eduard Palíšek, the country CEO of Siemens Czech Republic. We're very, very honored to have the industry join us here as well. Then we have Professor Radimír Vrba, Director of CEITEC from Brno, who we've also heard speak. And last but not least, and thank you for the extra time that you gave us before your flight back, Professor Antonio Krüger, who's now the CEO and Scientific Director for DFKI in Germany. So please join me in giving them a round of applause. I will also be asking for questions from the audience. So if you want to appear and sound clever in front of your peers, start thinking of those questions now, because I think there'll be a good opportunity for discussion. But starting from the very beginning, resilience and competitiveness. Where do you see the current status quo in Europe? Anyone want to take the conch in the shape of a microphone? Or Professor, will you kick us off? Thank you.
Okay, I'll try to start. So, situation in Europe, AI enters our lives and we need to react. I think Europe cannot just follow, US in developing better GPT systems and bigger computing power. We cannot just follow Chinese colleagues who are very ahead of us in the field of human robots. We need to find our way. And the most important issue is to realize where is Europe strong. And the strongest part of our activities should be made even stronger and competitive in a worldwide scale. And if we try to identify, there are two areas where we can contribute significantly. One of them is manufacturing. Europe has got tradition, but also experience, know-how, capacities, capabilities in manufacturing. Why not to enhance our manufacturing skills and our manufacturing efficiency by using AI? And it might be our advantage in comparison to the US or China. The other issue is to use AI for speeding up research, because research is bringing new ideas, new materials, new medicaments, new things. And Europe is strong in research. There are many research institutes in different disciplines, various disciplines. Why not to enhance this research by using very efficient computing power? Yeah. To evaluate in using generative, for instance, AI, why not to leverage the presence of AI in speeding up experiments, explanation, automatic inference of new knowledge or new materials, whatever. So I think these two areas should be in the focus of our attention to go to be in some sense competitive to the rest of the world. The other issue is management, the leadership, but I think the others, especially from industry, can talk about it.
Thank you, and thank you for foreshadowing, because industry is exactly where the eye of Sauron is shifting next. I would like to ask about European regulation, because you see this in relation to competitiveness, I think, very acutely, because you work with such a wide industry of partners of various shapes and sizes. Where do you see the role of regulation in terms of European resilience and competitiveness?
So first of all, before everything I say, I have to say I am a yeah. So everything what may contradict to that statement, take as a honest critic to make things being better in future. So obviously, if you look at the speed of implementation of those advanced technologies, we are far behind the rest of the world. Yeah. Even though actually, and we have an honor to have Professor Walster, who is a father of Industry 4.0, and I have full respect to his concept, which is applied in many countries. Implementation of the concept goes much faster in Asia and other regions. In 2024, more than 500,000 robots were installed, and only 16% of them were installed in Europe. Rest is more than 50% in China, and the rest in the rest of the Asia. So asking about regulations, of course, certain regulations are needed to secure the safety, protecting people's right and all this stuff. But there are certain limits to that, which in case we regulate over that limit, we start blocking the progress.
Mhm.
And I think it's obvious, and it was mentioned by Professor Mařík, that we will most probably not catch this train, which was about developing this basic models and so on. But we have to ask question about how we should position ourselves. And if we will not look at this from the critical point of view, but from the positive point of view, we can definitely build on our competencies, precision, the technologies and so on. This is some fundamental benefit we have in Europe. It's definitely not speed. It's not definitely not massive investments into that. And that's something what comes to the question of resilience, because just imagine those guys who invested billions of US dollars in building those new technologies, building data centers, those other guys who invested billions of yuans in copying and so on. So those will all look for some kind of monetization of this effort. This is not donation. This is not charity. Yeah. Today is very much for free because we are all paying with our own data. Yeah. People don't see that, don't realize that, but this is the fact. Yeah. But sooner or later, somebody will set the bill for this. And the question is actually how we will be ready for to stay somehow independent on that, because by massive implementation of AI, we will of course grow our dependency on this technology. Many people speak about it, that there will be end of certain professions like the coders and so on. But just imagine when time comes and somebody will just switch off or stop data flow, and actually what then? So Europe should, rather than increase further regulations, think about it, how to make the not only backup scenario, but how to really become not so dependent on that what is provided from the outside of Europe. I will not be specific from where. Everybody can probably imagine what I'm talking about. So definitely looking at our advantages. As I mentioned, very strong history, very strong competencies, fantastic education system, innovative people, big domain know-how of many industries. Those are areas where we can definitely build on our applied artificial intelligence advantage. And this is area where we may even become to be leaders in global scale for that, because not everything could be, developed over the night. You need to know something to really make the things happen. So this is advantage of Europe, which I believe we can build on.
Yes, absolutely. And it was really encouraging to hear how often you reference humans, because we're already in a position where companies have, fired their people, and now they realize that tokens are more expensive than people, because obviously now that we're dependent on these large language models, for example, they have the luxury of ramping the price up, and that is already happening. And I would like to kind of shift now the question to Radimír Vrba from CEITEC, because you've shown us a beautiful showcase of how you increasingly are capable of automating pretty much anything in manufacturing, and you do amazing work there. What do you think is the role of humans in this like increasingly autonomous environment, and how do you deal with that from a research perspective?
Okay. It's a very good question, because there are big fears about many people to lose their job. But there is a new role for a human in this new process, because it should be necessary to develop new AI-driven industrial systems. And the role of human will be changed to higher level. So it means it depends on the ability of people now working manually, whether they are ready to upload or to improve their abilities. So, for instance, there are many SME, small and medium enterprises in this country, and many of them would like to apply these AI-driven systems, but they have a very small amount of data. They have the old machines which are not talking each other. So it should need some investment, and it's a question whether they find or they can look for additional money to support these activities. But I think the large infrastructures like this, which were maybe prepared in the frame of RICAIP program, could help this.
Yes.
Because there is a future to prepare individual industrial AI-driven systems.
Beautifully put. Remember, RICAIP is fundamentally a resilience infrastructure. Like if you want to like really beef up your arsenal and your technology and your people, I think this is a great place to do it. And oh yes, absolutely, yes, enthusiasm is good. Thank you.
Just react. I think you mentioned one very important thing, and this is the state of the manufacturing environment in Europe. If you look at the implementation of digitalization and all these automation systems, we are in big scale working in brownfield companies. There are just few very new factories which are built from scratch, from zero, on the fully digitalized concept. Yeah. So we have this disadvantage against the Asia, for example, where actually the new factories are built like mushrooms, and already digital, that we have to go through this first adaptation step to convert these brownfields to digital state. And then once we have the data backbone, once we have the overall digital system in the company, then we can start with implementation of AI. So this is also one disadvantage we have in Europe, which comes from our big advantage to have a deep roots of history. But on the other hand, it's also partially disadvantage to slow us down in implementation.
It's the baggage that we carry.
So this is just the reaction on that, what you very rightly said.
Thank you. I actually wanted to follow up with Antonio Krüger. Thank you so much for joining us here and coming to visit us. I was creeping on your LinkedIn. That is the beauty of sending your data out into the cloud. Anyone can read it. And not only are you the CEO at DFKI, but you also lead the Department of Cognitive Assistance. So you're very much in that interdisciplinary field. And your latest post about the Rise of AI conference where you spoke, you highlighted the importance of talent, for example, which is, again, very important for the new generation to build up manufacturing in Europe. What do you think are the current blockers that are kind of slowing us down? Several were mentioned, but from your unique perspective, what do you see needs to be unblocked?
So I think, first of all, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me. We live in very dynamic times at the moment, and the AI landscape is constantly evolving at the moment, and so, for example, and what's interesting is that actually the surface of this, the frontier actually is not uniform, and it's a little bit unclear, and not even absolute experts can predict at which point, of this kind of surface, we are making big progress in the next 3 months, and in which one we have more a stall. Yeah, for example, if you take the development in software engineering, Anthropic with Claude Code and so on, there has been tremendous development in the last 6 months. Yeah, that was hard to predict. One could have expected, that with scaling laws, we would move forward, but that was a big push actually. Yeah, in other areas, not so much. Yeah, and this makes it difficult, actually, I think, even for investors to understand exactly, where to put the money in. Yeah, and so for us, I believe in Europe, we need to, and this has been rightfully said, we need to think about what are our assets, what are we good at, what are the things that we can bring to the table. It's definitely not speed, yeah, which is a big drawback, I have to say. Yeah. So if I would have to point to a single impediment, I would say it's speed. We need to think about how we can speed up processes, of course, without losing actually our core identity in the European Union, in our democracies and so on. Of course, things are a little bit slower than elsewhere. This is part of the principle, but I think we did not find the sweet spot yet. Yeah, so there is, to put it a little bit in diplomatic terms. Yeah, so I think there is huge improvements. On the other hand, I believe that sometimes we are also, this is also typical European, maybe also German kind of attitude, we underestimate a little bit our potential and capabilities. So I'm also convinced about that. So if you take talent, for example, we know this, this is a place of talent, it has been mentioned a couple of times, We also see that external players value this maybe even higher than we do. So, and this can be seen in investments actually in research facilities from US companies into Europe. Yeah, and this has accelerated in the last, I would say, 18 months. Yeah, so Google opened up a large AI center in Berlin. There are activities a lot in France, in Paris, for example. Yeah, startups company, unicorn startup companies from Yun LeCun have decided not to basically be founded in the US, but came back actually to Europe. And this is not something that you would do, since those are rational decisions, that you would do if you would not believe in the ecosystem. Yeah, and I think this is one of the major advantages that we have. There's a talent, there's a pretty stable political environment. Yeah, and there is also movement, maybe a little bit too slow to my taste, yeah, but there is movement. Yeah, and for us in Europe, I think the best choice is to run on 2 tracks. One track is to work with the existing technology and not to be slowed down actually by too much hesitation that we have to rely on American structure, cloud services, but also the models. But at the same time, I think it's absolutely necessary to build up our own track along the stack. Yes. So that we have this will take a couple of years, and a couple of years in AI times is a lot of time. But still, there is no alternative to that. Yeah, so we need to build this up and do this a little bit in parallel at the moment. And regarding the topics, of course, industrial AI, I think for Europe, the big change will be that Europe has grown actually on manufacturing, on industrial development, and mainly because, and much of the wealth comes from there in the past, and this is also because the jobs were paid so well. And this will change. I think if I talk to economists, I'm not an economist, I'm a computer scientist, but if I talk to them, it's pretty clear the jobs will maybe not go away, but the salaries will go down. Yeah. So actually the wealth has also to come from elsewhere. And I think this is the big transformation that we are currently kind of facing in Europe. I'm not too worried that actually there will be no major value coming from AI in Europe. I see, for example, the industrial data, of course, where we have lots of experience, and this is an asset that US does not have. Chinese are building up this, and they're quick. Yeah, so this is again, an argument to move faster. We are kind of scattered a little bit, but so solutions have to be found for that. But then, if you look, for example, at robotics, the whole topic of physical AI, which is a culmination also of RICAIP's topic, that we have physical AI service, that we're talking not about kind of a projection of the real world, but about the real world, sensor data, manufacturing data, and so on. This, I think, is a big, big asset. And I also believe, although if you look at, of course, it appears as if, for example, in the robotics sector, China is far ahead. This is true for certain aspects, in particular for locomotion. If you've seen actually the Chinese New Year with the Unitree robots, and this performance, this is locomotion. There is no good actual use case. I haven't seen it yet of a Chinese robot in factories doing real stuff. Yeah, kind of assembling a door, for example, where you have kind of materials that are difficult to handle, because this requires all kind of different type of models, physical AI models, and also different handling skills that those don't exist yet. And those are chances that we have to go into these areas, and make statements and work on those. And so I'm at the moment, we can speak maybe in 3-4 months, I'm pretty optimistic that there is still a lot of potential. And this is also due to these kind of dynamic evolvements at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned speed, and already the ancient Greeks, how many of you have read Aesop's fables? The tortoise and the hare. The fact that the hare is very quick becomes very arrogant, and it's actually the tortoise that wins the race. Not that I would like Europe to be like the tortoise, but sometimes actually taking it slow and assessing the situation around you can be good. Also, just comparing the work culture, and for example, American companies. I used to work for an American startup. My grandfather passed away. They said, "Oh, that's sad." Right, back to Slack or Microsoft Teams or whatever. Here in Europe, we actually treat humans with a little bit more dignity. And I think in a world where the human nature is becoming more and more important as AI grows and grows and grows, I think people will come here for the cultural aspect as well. So you raised fantastic points, and thank you very much for that. You also raised something which I'm interested in Professor Mařík's and Professor Vrba's opinion on, which is the idea of investment. Now, the industry and this private sector wants to optimize, push, apply everything, which absolutely makes sense. That's where the money is. Sometimes basic research is needed as well. And that needs funding from more maybe forward-thinking VCs who are not immediately looking to sell, but who are looking to support and grow and more of a slow burn. How do you see that in Europe right now? And where is maybe space for improvement?
I think there will be a very important battlefield, and it's connected with talents, because you mentioned that talents are very important. We do have them in Europe, and we need to be very fast to, prepare talents for the future European needs. to react in a very fast way, in a very responsible way. So I think that's one thing. And here the venture capitalists could help because governments are too slow. European Union is even slower. And somebody should force the young generation towards achieving attractive goals which might be used worldwide or European-wide. So I think venture capitalists should, at the current situation, motivate young people to do things in a very fast way, in the way which might be accepted by other countries and our other continents. So they cannot expect that they are coming with money and in 2 years there will be 300% of return of investment. They should help to educate people to, how to say, prepare the talents for their future tasks, to be more efficient in European research space, in application of research results, and simply able to compete worldwide.
Yeah.
So that's, according to my opinion, the role of venture capital now.
Thank you very much. And we'll hear more about that in the afternoon as well. I'm looking forward to it. Professor Vrba, how do you see that in Brno? Maybe the cooperation with the private sphere investments, your talent that you have at CEITEC, where do you see the opportunities there?
Yeah, our experience is very similar to that which was defined by Professor Mařík. But I must say the talents are maximum 1-2% layer only of all young people. But investment to them is very important, I must say. And we have very skilled and talented PhD students because we have only PhD school, but many of them are very familiar with the situation abroad. Also, they spend at least a quarter or half a year abroad at the research institutes and come back mostly with very prestigious projects granted by not only European money but also Czech money. So it is a way how to support them.
Great, thank you, and congratulations as well to all of your students. That's great. I have more questions in the bank, as you can imagine, but I want to give you guys an opportunity to ask something. Ladies and gentlemen. Oh, yes, of course. Yes, Eduard, absolutely. Think of the questions.
I think what was said by both professors is absolutely right. Fight for talents and investment into talents is extremely important. But we should not forget that there are two ways how to get the funds for that: either to print money and increase the inflation and so on, or earn money. And that's what industry is here for. Yeah, we are here to really earn the money and through taxes, create the funds for developing talent and so on. So if we were talking about where the Europe should look for supporting that, one of the key problems I see is a scale. Yeah. Comparing Europe with other regions, actually we are so fragmented that it's completely different marketplace than in other regions. So where Europe can really play significant role instead of regulating, creating environment which will somehow tear down the borders. Unfortunately, there is some kind of front wind now with a growing populism in many countries of Europe, which are under the declarations that they are protecting national interests, in principle increasing the fragmentation, and even though they are presenting that they do it for people in countries, they in principle by doing that working against the interest of people in countries, because definitely it would be more beneficial to be part of something bigger than small isolated industries and countries or economics. So if we would create an environment for real, expanding the marketplace in Europe without any limitations and regulations, that would definitely help to scale. Because we shall not forget one thing. This is not only investment into AI. AI is some, I don't know which level of the investments comes, but for about 10 years, I looked when we issued the first book of Industry 4.0 as a future for Czech Republic, and it's 10 years. We are trying to persuade Czech industry that this is the only way how we can get forward to look for digitalization and all these activities. Even though we invest a lot in that, thanks to RICAIP, thanks to National Center for Industry 4.0 Center, thanks to CIIRC initiatives and all this stuff, actually the situation on the Czech market is still not where it should have been after 10 years of such a massive support. So what also can help is to find some monetary motivation for industries, for SMEs particularly, because bigger companies are usually much better in that, to go through this barrier of entry to digitalization, because this, of course, it starts to generate money, but not immediately. And there is certain, barrier to enter that, not only mental barrier, which is sometimes even bigger than a monetary barrier, but also this one. So those are two elements which I would very much wish Europe to focus on rather than regulating, focusing on enabling scaling and also enabling SMEs to enter in this digital world and helping them to go through this barrier of entry. That's my comment from industry.
No, this is great, and yes, absolutely. Let me please hand the microphone over. Thank you. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I have a question about the industrial transformation here in the Czech Republic, because my observation is that, let's say, 10 years ago, there were already big foreign companies, especially you are from Siemens. We have Bosch, Volkswagen, and so on. Yeah, but they used the talents more in a physical way. So they needed people who do, more or less lower level jobs on the job floor. But this has changed, and this is very clever and is a must, because now the competition for cheap workforce and so on, outsourcing to Czech Republic doesn't make sense, because here the salaries are higher. It's very good. So there was a big development in the industry. My question is now, is this now a strategy? I think you should, in the long term, convert, like in Saarland. We had to do this in steel industry, less and less jobs, but the design of new factories in India and so on, China, you can make a lot of money. So the more, let's say, intellectual and more demand on education has now at least partially worked in Saarland, and I think I see this also in here in Prague, and maybe what you say in Siemens, part of the innovation, which is traditionally done only in Munich, is now shifting, and I think you were successful that some of the new developments are done here by people sometimes with a PhD who go to Siemens, which let's say 20 years ago was not the case, 10 years ago not the case. Only people sometimes without any, they had talent, physical talent, but no education, or less education.
You are absolutely right with that observation. When I took over responsibility for Siemens in Czech Republic, it was 16 years ago. That was absolutely the fact. We had the majority of our colleagues in production area. From that time, Siemens divested a lot of manufacturing, let it go on its own, and invested into high value add activities. We have currently thousands of engineers sitting here in Prague, developing products for entire Siemens globally. We have hubs, centers of competencies, and this is exactly this utilization of talents, not on handcraft, but talents of brains. And this is the only commodity we really have. We don't have sea, we don't have wind, we don't have coals, we don't have whatever, but we have a brains. Yeah?
Yes.
So, and this is exactly our strategy to convert from just manufacturing mainly to research field.
Great.
Okay, I would only briefly comment the previous question dealing with talented students. Maybe the question for audience. There is a new decision valid from the beginning of this academic year. We should guarantee so-called doctoral guaranteed income. It means stipend for each month. How much money do you think it is? Some tips?
If it's anything like the maternity cover, then I'm sure it's excellent. Yes.
It's about 1,000 euro. 1,000 euro. But no money was supplied by the Ministry of Education. It was only the task for us to guarantee paying such stipend to these PhD students, or definitely students. And it's one comment only. There are headhunters coming, for instance, from Taiwan. Recently, a group of such people visited Brunel University of Technology, and they would appreciate to have additional 2,000 engineers in electronics, microelectronics, technologies, etc., etc. And by the way, many of our PhD postgraduates go directly to Thermo Fisher Scientific, which is a producer of electron microscopes. So
very conveniently in Brno. Yes.
It's our problem.
Yes. This is a really, really good point. And Antonio, I'm looking at you now. It was already mentioned that in Saarland, you, for obvious reasons, had to go through this digital transformation. I would like to bring back the focus on RICAIP because this is why we're all here. And while the project is ending, in a sense, it's just the beginning. What do you think that the kind of German-Czech relationship can bring for the future to kind of solve or at least put a dent in this problem that we've now been speaking about with talent?
So I think the big advantage is actually that also the economies are intertwined, strongly. And and this is something that we at DFKI in our international collaboration we had most success with, if given also our mission, which is a transfer mission, of course, where we say, okay, we want, of course, do also basic research, but not only just for the basic research itself, but for certain benefits, for society, but in particular also for industry. And I believe it's, and therefore I'm also absolutely not worried that actually this momentum that we've built up with RICAIP will stop. We've heard there is already kind of an organization, a follow-up organization in the making. We have lots of projects also together on different levels, and I think this is driven also by this kind of mutual mindset in terms of economic power, and possibilities and potential, and also facing similar challenges. This is, I think, also something that bonds together and helps to, if you put it positively, these kind of challenges always kind of foster creativity and help actually to find new ways. And as I mentioned, we live in very dynamic times, and not only in technologically dynamic times, but also politically dynamic times. And for Germany, I can say, but I think for Czech Republic is the same thing. It's in these kind of situations, having reliable partners, that you've worked with together, that are in similar situations, is super valuable and very useful, and therefore I believe this will maybe be in the future even more important than it's now. Yeah, so this is, I think, a big contribution that RICAIP has set actually the foundations that help us to build now and go further. Yeah.
Yes, the mention of trust, the fact that you don't have to constantly look over your back, but you have colleagues that you enjoy working with also, that makes it all that more pleasurable. Thank you. We have chance for one more question before lunch, which is where the magic happens and the real business happens anyways. But does anyone have one? Yes, sir. If I could help, if someone could just give me a hand, thank you so much.
Hello. Yeah. Okay. I represent the SME from Czechia, even though working for international business. Most of you have said that the competitiveness of Europe is related to know-how, knowledge, educational system, engineering. You're an expert. How many engineering students does Europe deliver per year? And how does it translate to China and US, just a scale? Because I know the figure US-China, so I'm just wondering, quantity, because we talk about quality, the 1%, the PhDs, the fantastic ones. But I think that the challenge of Europe is we need quantity as well, because without quantity, you don't deliver quality. The Chinese, they said, if we have millions, we deliver few fantastic. Americans say, I just need a fantastic because the rest, I don't care. Where do we stand with that?
So I have the microphone, but I don't have a figure actually. We could try to ask an AI model. I'm pretty sure that it will know this. So yeah. So I think our main challenge is, of course, I think the figure is too low. This would be actually my guess. Yeah. And but the main challenge is actually to also keep the talent in Europe. So it's not only kind of ramping that figure up, but keeping it in Europe. And this requires, and then I come back to what I've said earlier and we discussed earlier, and this requires a good infrastructure and good environments. This is again another argument why we need actually our own good infrastructure. And competitive infrastructure and attractive infrastructure to keep those talents in place. This is actually my take, and therefore, while I also see that actually the applicants in STEM study programs are going down, or kind of leveling out, this is not good. So this is something we have to work on. But then at the same time, it's not. In the end, it doesn't matter, where the engineers come from. If they come to Europe and we can keep them here, with an attractive environment, I think this will be crucial.
Yes. But by the way, I just put it into ChatGPT very quickly, and European Union actually produces almost twice as many as the US. But it's the brain drain, etc., that is our problem, and the salaries. So yeah, we're sitting on gold, ladies and gentlemen. Let's use it. So, oh yeah, yes, yeah. Yes.
Okay, maybe my comment to this question. I have no one student who is working in China, for instance, but the situation is vice versa related to applicants to our PhD study program. Now we have about 50% of students coming from abroad. There are many applicants who try to come from China and much more from India. Yeah. And there is our experience in this way, so vice versa.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I have two comments. One comment is that we need to keep the talents and educated people not only in Europe, but we need to keep them in European research institute, European factories. because more and more Chinese companies tries to build here research centers. US companies are coming and grabbing our best talents, so we have to protect ourselves. I don't know in which way. And we have to stop the process and reverse it a little bit. The other issue is that in our country there is a problem how to increase the number of students of engineering. Mathematics is no more obligatory subject at the end of their high school study. So only 16% of our students of high schools passes the math exam. What does it mean? 84% of our young generation is simply excluded from engineering education in the future. Without math, you cannot do engineering. And 84% is out of the game. Because it was very popular decision by the Czech government, their children didn't like math, so they decided to cancel it. But we started to suffer strongly from this fact, and it's necessary to to generate pressure to return it back, because math should be, at least in certain extent, should be background for future generations.
Yes, absolutely. As well as the maths teachers who are leaving in tragic numbers, the sector for various reasons.
Not only that, there is actually another dimension, and this is a gender problem. Just look how many ladies are here in the room. Just guess. I counted it. 10, maybe 11. Yeah. So what we should work on, and we at least in Siemens are trying very hard to actually motivate ladies also to go to technology and to join these technical universities, because there is unleashed potential of Europe, and this is a massive brain capacity which is not properly directed in the so exciting topics like is technology, IT, engineering, mechanic engineering, and all this stuff. So this is another task for not only Europe, but all of us in the room to promote ladies for the technological studies and finally also for jobs in techniques.
Thank you very much. And actually, we're way ahead of you, because me and Cancer already made friends, and we might collaborate on some research together in the future. So it's all good. Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, our panel is drawing to an end, but I can see it buzzing. So take that energy with you. Don't let the oxygen go from your brain to your stomachs. Keep it up there, but also do have some food that we have prepared. But I think if I were to summarize our wonderful panel, and gentlemen, you were fantastic. When was Europe awesome? The Renaissance. And what did the Renaissance do? You had the private sectors, such as the Medicis, who also founded the first banks, pushing money into people like Leonardo da Vinci that couldn't survive in an average corporate today, but was given a chance to shine without necessarily a pressure to produce something. And we need to go back to this visionary, nimble, interdisciplinary way of supporting talent if we are to compete with the huge mountains of money and capital that America and China has. That's not the way. We'll never catch up with this, but we can be clever about it. But in order to be clever about it, we need to cooperate and have the mutual trust, which is what I'm really happy sounded from all four of you today. So thank you again. Let me recount who we had on the panel. Professor Antonio Krüger, the CEO and Scientific Director of DFKI, Professor Radimír Vrba, the Director of CEITEC, Dr. Eduard Palíšek, the country CEO of Siemens Czech Republic, and last but not least, Professor Vladimír Mařík, the Scientific Director of CIIRC CTU, and of course you, our wonderful audience. Give them a round of applause, and we'll see you after lunch at 13:20. Thank you.